Hello fellow humans and welcome to this week's shop review. We start off with the most important section, that is the tanks. We have an excellent bundle with a T56A2 here for 5.5k gold, 30 days of premium, 500,000 creds. These bundles still do exist. And these times 5s are unlocked. You can use them on any tank. So this is a very great bundle right here. The vehicle itself is, well, just slightly above average. It's by no means amazing. It's got pretty low alpha damage. What this essentially is, it's a medium tank that tries itself at being a heavy, just a Pershing with more armor and less mobility. So if you're into that kind of thing, then it is still a great pickup. 10 degrees of gun depression, pretty damn good third armor, 2.5k DPM. It is a solid vehicle nonetheless, and this bundle, I can highly recommend it, especially also because these times 5s, if you are grinding a tech tree or something like that, they can be extremely useful. And the Object 752, I do think it is an amazing vehicle, however, 17.5k is a bit too much for my taste. And then it's time for an apology, because a couple of months ago I did recommend this bundle and I told you to immediately buy it. Now the problem of that was it cost 5,000 gold more, which means I'm very sorry for costing you 5,000 gold back then. But as true as it was back then, it is even more true now. Buy this thing right now. These are two, if not the two, best tier 8 heavy tanks in the game for 12,500, and that's about 5k each. And you do have times 5s in here, but they do apply to the tanks, so they're a bit less useful. But they're equipped, they've got camos in them, which, I mean, the camos aren't really worth anything to me. But 12.5k for these two vehicles is excellent, and I highly recommend both of them. This is, if you buy these two premium tanks, that's all you need ever in terms of grinding creds. You have two vehicles that are fun and that are extremely good, depending on your playstyle, of course. On their own, they cost 8.5k, but to be fair, if you get one, you get both. If you already have one of them, then yes, that's your option. To get the other 8.5k for these two vehicles is perfectly reasonable, I would say, at the maximum. Like I've always been saying, 10k is the absolute maximum for a tier 8, so 8.5k here for these great vehicles is pretty damn solid, and I highly recommend them. Then we've got the Concept 1B, 25k. For 20k, we would have talked about it, but these times 5s are unfortunately also locked to the Concept. 25k, not really worth it, given how cheaply the Chieftain has been sold and the Super Conqueror have been sold for 20k, because it is no better than those, it's simply a bit different. The DPM is quite a bit lower, base is 2,700, penetration is pretty good, 271, that is something that this vehicle does have an advantage of. 380 alpha damage only, however, the accuracy, the gun depression is pretty damn good. The top speed is only 45, but power weight ratio is 18, so it's pretty solid in that regard. But the problem with this vehicle is, in this kind of position, it's pretty much impenetrable, because obviously the turret, you can't pin it, it's just a gun mantlet. But as soon as you turn it, it becomes weak because it's flat on the side. So basically, point your head straight at the enemy, it's gonna work. But if you already have a Chieftain or a Super Conqueror, there is absolutely no reason to pick this vehicle up. Then we've got these that will be gone soon. And then we have the Urban Parallel Platoon, which are still horrible. And then we go to the resources. Now, buying combat boosters isn't really a great idea unless you like playing tournaments or raiding battles to get that slight bit of an advantage. But other than that, they're a complete waste of money, really. And so are camos in pretty much any form, because you can get camos for 75k a pop. So you don't have to spend 3k gold on a camo that does the exact same. Now, sure, aesthetics and stuff like that, but it's still a waste of money. It's an aesthetically waste of money. Now, then the winner's kits are a lot better than bundles that include credits, because this doesn't include credits, and these are mostly a decent deals. Now, 75 times 5s is pretty big, and you can get through an entire tech tree, if not two, with 75 of these. So, 13k gold. This is pretty solid if you are looking to fast grind your later stage, like your 20th tech tree tank, and you want to do it quicker. This is something that can help you out with that, but obviously be mindful of what you're spending your money on, because once you spent money in Blitz, it is gone forever, and the only two ways you can get it back is by either having a lot of fun or by making it worthwhile by achieving what you want it to do. And a vehicle that you should absolutely and completely ignore is the TS60, which is a new vehicle in the game, but it's in crates. Now, you should absolutely ignore this vehicle's existence entirely, because first of all, you have these two excellent vehicles that you can actually receive, as in with the crates, you don't get anything. And second of all, Well, let's have a closer look at this vehicle, shall we? However, before that, let's have a look at some other news. The TL7120 is in a draw, which makes it completely pointless because it's obviously incredibly overpriced, especially given that this vehicle is currently sold. I mean, if you buy anything except this thing at the moment, then you've got to be insane. Retrotopia still exists, and then this event where you can get boosters, I suppose. And obviously, update 10.1 happened, and it was so noteworthy that it didn't even deserve its own video. It added another heap of pointlessly expensive camouflages and a buff to the 047. And also, chat can now be re-enabled on the EU server. Now, rather than being a real tank destroyer, this vehicle is pretty much just a failed heavy tank. Now we can just see that by 3000 DPM, which is very good, and 308 alpha damage, which is not really that amazing for a tank destroyer. It's very similar to that of a T20H prototype. The accuracy on this vehicle is absolutely abysmal at 0.34 compared to regular heavy tanks. I mean, this is supposed to be a tank destroyer that's supposed to hit anything, but it doesn't. Now, the T28 prototype's accuracy is something else, but nonetheless. 7 degrees of gun depression, especially for a rear turret vehicle, really bad. And then the mobility, it's not really that good either. It's slower than most heavy tanks. It's a lot slower than the T41. And the armor, it doesn't really hold up too well either. Now, rather than this vehicle having a rear turret actually being good at side scraping, well, no, it isn't, because the hull bulged out here to house the absolutely monstrous turret, which means side scraping is essentially impossible without getting penned, because this plate right here is extremely vulnerable. Now, does it have more gun depression over the side, like let's say a VK90? No, it doesn't. It's still crap. And now, what we have on top of the tank is also a pretty massive cupola that can be penned by pretty much anything. Lower plate's a weak spot, as on everything, so the armor is very mediocre and not really that good, and even the turret front can be penned by some tier 8 and especially tier 9 vehicles. Now, the only thing this vehicle will really do is attract raccoons, because it is trash. And trash can diving isn't really what you want to do in Blitz in most cases, right? So, highly recommend not picking up this vehicle in any way, shape, or form. This is one of those vehicles that they throw out for 5,000 gold in hopes that someone buys it, rather than it actually being a real contender to be anything useful. Because here's the thing, if you want a heavy tank with a rear turret that's impossible to play, get the Chrysler K, it does that job a lot better. If you want a tank destroyer that can actually tank destroyer, you get a SU-130, a Scorpion G, or not a turtle, but this thing isn't as much of a tank destroyer as the T30, because it really isn't. The only thing well, it's more of a tank destroyer than the T30 because it can't turn its turret completely, but it still has the turret at the rear, which is a huge disadvantage, and as we saw on the armor earlier, side scraping's not really that possible. Now, this is one of, I think I needed 10 games to get anything good out of this vehicle, really, because the only way this really performs is if the enemy completely ignores your existence, and even then, you can do much better in a vehicle that is better. Now, overall, it's an okay tank. Like, it's not really something like an AMX GDC that's just completely horrible at the bottom of the barrel. This is more in the middle of the barrel, so the raccoon has to dig quite a bit to get to it. But for it to be down there, there's obviously no point to ever pick it up at the price it is currently, which is over 100 euros essentially. Did I mention the accuracy is bad? So, tank destroyer, by the way. Essentially, a failed heavy tank that pretends to be a tank destroyer, but isn't the T20 prototype, which makes it a lot worse. So you might as well buy that thing at that point, which actually has a somewhat decent gun. And again, the enemy's ignoring me, which is why I can farm damage. Now, is this vehicle worth anything? For 5k gold, we might be able to talk about it as a garage filler, right? As a vehicle that you pick up just to have it, just to collect something. But other than that, the value that this tank has is zero. Nada. Nilch. Null. It has no value. Very simple. Very simply put, it's a 5k crap tank packaged into looking like it's worth anything. That's all it is. So stay away from it as much as you can, especially when you have the amazing offer of the T54A2 and the T77 right there for like a tenth of the price that are like a double of the performance. So I urge you to, first of all, as always, stay away from crates as much as you can in any case, and also stay away from this vehicle as much as you can. There have been some decent releases in the past, but this ain't one of them. Get that trash out of my face. But you're not trash. Thank you very much for getting into my face and watching. See you next one. Goodbye.